Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech,
And this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
and welcome to the snobOS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We definitely want to thank you back to another episode. This is episode 208 of the snobOS Show. First off, as we always do, we definitely want to thank you for coming back. Thank you for supporting so long. Thank you for those who have decided to support us financially. If you want to support the show financially, you can go to patreon.com/ snobOScast. You for dropping your dollars as a way of saying thanks. We do give you some extra content. We give you the show live. So if you are a supporter, you get to watch the show live and you get some extra content. We just got done recording our pre-show where we talk a little bit about the Oscars, talk a little bit about saying RIP to one of quote unquote our greats that recently passed in R&B soul. So if you wanted to get in on that conversation, definitely go to patreon.com/snobOScast to become a Patreon supporter. Having said that, we're going to get right into the show. We always start with the lowdown where we talk all things Apple. Um, Obviously, everybody is talking about, or over the past couple of weeks or months, have been talking about all of the tech companies that have been seemingly doing layoffs. Talk about Microsoft, talk about Google, talk about Amazon, talk about Meta, talk about some of these other ones. List goes on and on and on. One of the names you won't see on there, knock on wood, is Apple. Apple has been able to avoid laying off in mass. I'm pretty sure they've had some restructuring, reorganization. I'm pretty sure all companies do some sort
Right.
of reorgan to where they try to consolidate or whatever the case may be, but they haven't done these
Massive.
massive tens and thousands of people at one time. And people have been trying to figure out, well, what is that? Why isn't Apple doing these layoffs? Because it sounds kind of sucky, but they would be well
To
within their right to lay
gloat a little.
off because everybody, well, not necessarily gloat, if they did decide to lay off, people wouldn't be that upset because everybody else is doing it, right?
Hmm.
I kind of mentioned, earlier, it's a previous podcast to where, you definitely want to do it when everybody else is doing it
Hmm.
versus you be the first or you the last to do
Right.
it because all eyes are going to be on you versus if you do it around the same time everybody else is
Right
doing
in
it.
the middle. Yep.
Yeah, you kind of don't take the targeted heat, versus the whole sector taking it, right? So,
Right.
for now, Apple has not um, laid anybody off, and I don't see any rumors that they are plan on doing it anytime soon. And it seems as it was a result of, according to the story that I'm reading in Barron's, that Apple has relatively had conservative hiring means in general. So it doesn't have to slash as many jobs now because they didn't go crazy and hire a bunch of people. Anytime they get a little uptick in revenue or
Hmm.
stock price or whatever the case may be. There's this quote that I want to read. It says, "Apple never hired aggressively through the pandemic and doesn't need to go through extensive headcount reductions, unlike peers. We continue to think consumer staples and or high-end luxury companies remain the relevant peer group for Apple." So basically what they're saying is, we didn't hire like willy-nilly, and our products people are still willing to pay for even if things are kind of tight. They're still going to buy their iPhones, still going to buy their iPads, things of that nature. So I thought that was dope that Apple is making those smart decisions, so they can kind of weather the storm as far as layoffs. Now, again, who knows? Maybe a couple weeks, couple months from now, Apple will finally, or reluctantly drop the hammer
Hmm.
on do some sort of layoffs. But I can't remember when the last time Apple did a major layoff. So I just wanted to get your opinion
Yeah.
on why you think In addition to, are there some other reasons you think Apple? Is it because the phones are still selling good? Is it because they, have all these stores? What do you think it attributes to, in addition to them just being kind of cheap when it comes to hiring people in the first place?
I think, the article and you hit the, hammer on the nail. They were very conservative when it came to hiring additional talent. One thing we do know is that Apple is not short on people who want to work for them. So they
Mm-hmm.
could have hired a bunch of people, but I don't know who in the leadership, kind of spearheaded this, but I think what a lot of other companies did, like your Facebooks, like your Googles, they had an uptick, during the pandemic. Even though we were in the pandemic and things are down, the tech industry was like booming,
Mm-hmm.
and people were taking advantage. And I think they may have lost sight of that, similar to like if you are, one of the Instagram's influencers or sellers, say you came up with, like I think a prime example, the young lady who opened a do-rag store,
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic, there was a point in time when everybody, everybody meaning non-black people, were like on this, oh my God, a do-rag. What is this? What is this magical article of clothing? So much so that she opened a brick and mortar store. And I mean, when she first opened it, it was like the first of its kind. It, became popular on the internet and people were coming and people were buying. I think just recently, either this week or last week, she had to close the brick and mortar because it was one of those things that were, a fad. And I think some of these tech companies, they
Mm-hmm.
mistook a quote unquote fad and made it into a business decision, and
Mm-hmm.
now
A
it's
new
coming
vertical.
back to right and now it's
Mm-hmm.
coming back to bite them
Mm-hmm.
because rising in inflation. We saw what happened with SVB. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
what's happening with other, investors and founders and banks, and people are really getting scared and skittish. So they're starting to trim the fat, so to speak, in preparation for a recession and preparation for a huge downturn, whether that comes, in like a flood like 2008, or whether it's something kind of light. They're just being overly cautious and really cutting things down. And the fact this comes on the heels of Facebook announcing, I think today, that they are laying off an additional 10,000 to
Oh
the
wow.
original 11,000 that they originally planned. And I think in this article in Barron's, it says that, yeah, Meta latest job cut announcement of 10,000 roles on top of the 11,000 cuts previously announced. So
Mm-hmm.
this just happened, I think, either today or yesterday, that this announcement just came out. So I think they did the first 11,000 for the overflow of people that they hired that they didn't need to. And now I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe this 10,000 is to kind of trim the fat in preparation for a potential recession or potential increase in inflation.
Yep. They announced what's today, the 14th. Yeah, so it looks like it was
15.
yesterday. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right. So yeah, so it's funny how, as a side note, it's funny how major businesses can decide that they need to lay off people to be more efficient, to trim the fat, to get to a certain number, whatever the case may be. And people are like, oh, that's what businesses do. That's a smart business decision. You hate to see it, but the businesses are, the name of the business is to turn a profit. And if they can't turn a profit, first thing they're going to do is cut expenses, and the biggest expense is employees. So such is life.
Yeah.
Right. But when people do it,
Mm,
recession.
mm.
When people say, you know what, I need to trim the fat, I need to stop going out to eat, I need to stop taking vacations, I need to
I'm
stop
pay
buying
down some of this
homes,
debt.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna pay down some of this debt, I'm gonna stop buying cars, I'm gonna stop buying homes, I'm going
Yeah.
to put my money in the bank. Now all of a sudden the country is like, oh, we need to do something. What are we gonna do? Drop prices because we need to get these suckers out here spending money. But when
Yeah.
businesses with all these billions of dollars
Mm.
decide they ain't gonna make as much money that they projected to make,
Even though
so
they still
as a
make plenty of
result,
money.
still made plenty of money.
Yeah.
We just didn't make how much we said we was gonna make. And
Mm.
since we didn't hit that mark, now we got to lay people off. It's like, oh
Yeah.
well,
Shut it down.
it is what it is. That's how
Mm.
businesses stay afloat. But when people do it, it's like, oh no, we need y'all out there spending money, or this economy is going to tank. And it's just, it always amazes me how our economy is built on the backs of people
Mm.
who can't afford it versus the
Mm-hmm.
people who can afford it. They are the ones that always getting the breaks, the ones that are always not held liable for things. It's just crazy.
It
But
got to be
anyway, side
bailed
note.
out. You got to be bailed out because
Right,
it could hurt everybody.
right.
But when they are trying to give, working class people a $10,000 break on student loans, oh, we can't afford that.
We
Now it
can't
has to go
afford
to
that.
Supreme Court to make
Right.
that decision. It's very interesting. And, on our tangent, it's going to be very interesting to see how they spin this because you just bailed out this company who's,
This bank,
three,
yeah. It's
this
two
bank.
banks. It's two banks. I think they
Yeah,
built out another one.
Signature. Yeah,
Uh huh.
Signature was after SVB. But the thing is, prior to this happening, the several of the C-suite members they cashed out a bunch of stock
Did they?
right
I didn't
before
read
they
that.
cashed. One of them, it was like $4.4 million between the three of them. And so this was like right before it collapsed. And so people are saying, "Oh no, it was a scheduled thing." So what?
Sure.
Cancel,
Even
cancel
if it
payment.
was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cancel. And then they were like, I think they were scheduled to get bonuses right before I think the federal government took over. Those bonuses went out as well. I saw that on
What
the
you get a
news.
bonus for if the bank is in peril and y'all got to raise funds in the first place, and when you don't raise, when people panic because you mentioned you got to raise funds in order to cover the people's money that you said was in the bank in the first place, how you get a bonus off of that?
Yeah, they did. And then they were like, well, actually most of the people who got the bonuses, they went to, other SVB accounts. So, they're kind of tied up in it. No, they're not. Because the government has guaranteed all the depositors. And
All of
some
them.
of the depositors are these executives for the bank. So they're still going to get their money, even
That
though
is,
they set this up to put the run on the bank to cause this collapse.
or
And
didn't see it coming, whether they set it up on purpose or were negligent in their job. Again, how you get a bonus when you didn't see this coming?
yeah. And so what they're saying is Peter Thiel, I think they're trying to put the blame on him. He has quite a few investors, founders
And
that
he
use
told
that
them to
bank,
yank their money.
and he
Yeah.
told them to take their money out. And so they started pulling their money out and they couldn't cover deposits. So now they're trying to sell bonds to make up the difference because when you think you go to your bank, it's your money that's in
Right.
there, and you
Right.
go to make a deposit of your own money, which you're entitled to do, and they tell you we ain't got it. Like, what the hell? How are you gonna tell me you
Right.
don't have
My
my
money.
money? And so it's one of those things where it's very interesting. And I get, people are talking on there talking about, well, I'm a founder, I'm not rich, this is going to impact us. I get it. I completely understand. At the same time, when you go into these type of investments, you understand that there is risk. This
Right.
is one of those risks. And the
Right.
fact that the government is going to bail it out, and they're saying it's not a bailout, it's not coming from taxpayer money. Eventually this gets back to the taxpayer having to front this, even if it isn't direct upfront. Trust me, the taxpayer is going to pay for
And
this.
even if the taxpayers don't pay anything for it, it's still a bailout. You risked your money.
Mm-hmm.
The play didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to. It's a risk.
You take the
If
loss.
you take the loss, and then of course, I get it. I know how economics work,
Yep,
and
absolutely.
all these other,
It's
especially
not black
SV.
and white. There are special use cases, absolutely all of that. But in the
And
grand scheme of things,
yep, yep. But if the American people mess up, it's just like,
I mean,
sucks to be you.
ask for $10,000
On
for
student
student loan
loan,
debt.
and y'all tripping.
It was a whole bunch of this you on this day because a lot of these people who were against the student loan forgiveness, a lot of them talk trash about it, but they were the same ones. We got it. The government has to step in. They have to guarantee this. I mean, and then people like this, you bringing up those tweets and they're talking about this is not this is not the right of the government. You
Right.
borrowed it, you should pay it back. It's your, it was a bunch of issues, and it was like, mm-hmm.
See,
So I'm very
see.
interested to see
Mm-hmm.
how this is going to play out with the political figures who've taken all this money from these tech investors as campaign contributions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How are you going to justify this to the
Mm-hmm.
American people when you just told them that you can't give them $10,000 because it's against their constitutional rights? At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you swing over here
Uh-huh.
and you just
Uh-huh.
got bailed out by multiple hundreds of billions. Like, something in the milk ain't clean.
That's how society works. Unfortunately,
Mm,
those who have will always have, and those who
always.
don't always end up getting the short end of the stick. But all right, moving on, moving
Yeah, yeah,
on.
we talked about that. Yeah.
It seems like Apple is dropping a new app. It's called Apple Music Classical, and it is exactly what it sounds like it is. Apple has retained its classical music library. Apple, I think they bought a startup. Where is it at? They bought a startup, and they really haven't done anything with it. But basically, what the startup was classical music, and Apple hasn't done anything with the catalog, with the property that they purchased until now. It looks like you can pre-order Apple Music Classical from the App Store, and it'll be installed on your device as soon as the app is released. Same, if you're already paying for Apple Music, it runs off the same $9.99 per month subscription, so you're not paying extra for it if you're already paying for Apple Music. You'll get access to links to Apple Music segments of your subscription. So if you're in Apple Music and you find some classical music, I think it'll link out to this Apple Music Classical, if I'm reading that correctly. It will only be coming to iPhones though, and it'll only be compatible with iOS 15.4 or later. So pretty much all the latest phones, like even I think the iPhone 7 will get Apple Music Classical. Doesn't say anything for iPads or Mac OS, just for iPhones. So yeah, if you're into that, you can definitely go and do some searching. Wait for this to drop on what I say, the 28th. Yeah, March 28th, and you'll be able to, dig through and create a library of classical music. Again, that ain't my thing, but I make sure that there are some people out there who are listening to classical music, so you can get that as easy as you would get anything from Apple Music.
Yeah, I was a little confused. I was initially a little confused about this. I'm like, why don't they just roll it into Apple Music because it
Right.
still is music? And then when I read down a little bit more in the article, it talked about it. And it says one of the biggest reasons why Apple is separating Apple Music classical from the primary Apple Music library is curation. So apparently, it makes sense. You have class, you say you have Beethoven's concerto, whatever the flavor.
Mm-hmm.
He played it and he composed it, but there are so many other people who have played it themselves on their
Mm-hmm.
piano or their
Mm-hmm.
violin. So it's all these different types of variations of the one song. Whereas for most, mainstream music, you
If you
know,
search for it in Apple Music, you'll find 50 million thousand versions of it versus Apple Music Classical. You search for name, you're going to get that song.
no, reverse. So
Oh,
with
reverse? Okay.
Apple Classical, you'll see everybody who's redone
Oh,
or
okay. Okay.
who's re-recorded the original artist. So like I said,
Okay.
Beethoven. So if you have someone who's played it on a violin or someone else who's played it on the piano, you'll have all of those versions. Whereas with Apple Music, say if you got a Beyonce song, you're not going to see covers of Beyonce's song in Apple Music. You're just
Oh,
going to
okay.
see Beyonce's
So there are
version
people with
because that's the real version.
Apple Music Classical. People want to hear those cover versions more
Right.
so.
Or at least, they'll all be in there. So where it
Uh,
won't really, I guess, mess with your algorithm or your curation with your
mhm.
regular Apple Music because it would just be, for lack of a better word, it'd be too much. When if you want to listen to Bach's Concerto number 5 from, you know, Sally McFlipperson, you can go and find her version, but you will also see the original as well. So apparently that's because I was like, why would they separate it? But yep, that's what they said.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. So, like I said, if you're into that, definitely check that out. Let us know what you think. Hit us up on social. How does it work? All right. The last one I got for the lowdown is it looks like people within Apple are pushing that the AR headset, the rumored AR headset, will launch in 2023, as opposed to some people inside of Apple are thinking that a 2024 or 2025 release would be better so they can catch up and make a better version of it. According to this story I'm reading, Cultamac, Apple's operations team wanted to launch a version of the headset with ski goggle like design. So you're thinking the big ski goggles, right?
Mm,
It would have allowed users to watch 3D videos, chat with realistic avatars on FaceTime calls, and do interactive workouts. But the design team pushed back on the release. The designers wanted to launch a lightweight version of the AR glasses. However, this will take a long time as technology is still not ready. I think we read a story or talked about a story to where, you wear the goggles and then you have
mhm.
to attach to a battery
Battery
pack
pack. Yeah.
that you wear, which weird. So maybe that's the designers saying that we don't want to release it like that. So give us some time.
Mm,
But Johnny Ive, no longer in charge of Apple design operations, the design team does not enjoy the same powers as before. So it sounds
mm,
like the operations team, which Tim Cook used to be a part of,
mhm.
they seem like they have a little bit more weight versus the Johnny Ive team that love the design, so on and so forth. They're kind of taking a back seat. And reading a little bit more, financial report reveals that Tim Cook even sided with the operations team and pressed ahead with the headset's launch, which will reportedly happen this year. This was despite objections from the design team. Seemingly, designers and engineers inside the company are under huge pressure to ship the headset. So it looks like, according to the story, there's some disagreements, but the engineers and operations teams have won. And it looks like, if the rumors are true, we may see an AR VR headset later this year. What do you think about that?
This isn't surprising because the designers are very much purists
Mm-hmm.
and they want it to be perfect in every way. Operation engineering, they're like, hey, we got a version. It's been a few years now. People have been talking about it. People are going to lose patience. They're going to lose interest because it has been kind of languishing out there. So you want to make a perfect product that nobody might buy because they lose interest, or we may make a subpar or less than perfect design according to you and strike while the iron is hot and getting money. I think they can win honestly both ways because as we've seen from the original iPhone to now what we're on the iPhone
The
14,
iterations, right?
the iterations, if you go with the ski goggle version, basically use whatever naming convention you're going to use, how you have the iPhone 4, 4S, now we're up to the Pro and the Pro Max and the XR. It's really about if you have a good enough project and product with the ski goggles to launch, you think you have a good enough product, launch that version with whatever name you want. And once you get to 2024, what, 2025, if you have your perfect product, launch that under the same heading or under the same banner, but just a different version. I
Mm-hmm.
don't get why it's that big of a, I
Well,
guess,
what
issue if you think of it that way. To
what's
me,
going to happen is people want Apple to be perfect, period.
yeah.
And what I envision happening is if Apple does release a product that doesn't meet the immediate next best thing, greatest thing since sliced bread that Apple unfortunately has built itself up to be, they're going to see the ski goggles, and let's just say argument's sake, you got to hook up to a battery pack and you got to spin around 3 times and click your heels, you know, before it powers up. You know, people are going to clown this thing
Yeah.
to death. Now, that may not stop them from buying it, but it not shame is not the right word, but you know, Apple, they may get scarred, tarred and feathered a little bit if this doesn't come out to be, oh, this is the best. This Apple does it again with the best AR goggles on earth. You know, back when the iPhone came out, that was something new. People didn't know what to think. Apple had to kind of guide people as to what this thing is, and then we came along for the ride, right? That's not the case with AR VR goggles. We know what those are supposed to do. They're supposed to create a virtual reality. Now, how well they do it is based on how well the company is, and people assume Apple being up here, they're going to do something great. Now, if they don't, and they come out with something that's just here, and Apple says, well, this thing costs $3,000, but hang on, we're going to iterate. People may be like, man, from Apple, from anybody else, yeah, but from Apple, shame on y'all, you know. So I'm not saying that's what I think is going to happen, but I can see, you know, damned if you do damned if you don't for Apple.
Yeah, Apple's going to get clowned either way, whatever the case may be. Even if it's the most perfect thing to come out,
True.
it's still
They're
going
gonna
to
pick it
be
apart.
the
True.
dissenters that find, oh, the back flap isn't flush with the
Right.
front flap, you know,
Right.
something to that effect. But to me, if the operations and engineering team thinks that they have a good enough product to put that Apple name on and to push it out into you know, the population, that it has to be, you know, still pretty good. I think from what it seems to me from this article, I could be reading it wrong, is the designers have one particular design in mind. That's their AR glasses. They don't want to do nothing outside of that. Whatever else you got going on, we don't want that. This is what we design. This is what we want. And if we don't have this, then we don't want none of it. It could be that where they want to do their explicit version of this, whereas the operations team is like, well, this was our kind of one of our initial thoughts, and we've made this work, and it works pretty good. We like it, and you know, we can justify the $3,000 cost, because regardless, these things could walk and talk and walk and charge themselves, walk over to plug themselves to the charger for $3,000. People are still going to complain because it is $3,000. So I don't, again, the way how they get through this, they have to set it up in the way that it makes sense. They have to do, you know, they're going to have to do some, you know, greasing of the wheels. They're going to have to do some flashy videos, and they're going to have to make it one of the biggest Apple events outside of the original iPhone event to get people ready and to make people aware of what this particular goggle version is, so people can start to buy into it, especially with a $3,000 price tag.
Yeah, so we shall see. And I think the story, you know, they make a good point to where, you know, Apple has been all about design up until now. Now, you know, those design folks that have been the kings and
Johnny's
queens of
gone,
Apple,
so
yeah, now they don't have their, you know, ace in the hole.
they're
So
champion. Yeah.
yeah. So now they may have to take a back seat and let the engineers and operators and the operations folks, you know, take the front and you know, let them decide the future of Apple, as it were.
Yep.
All right, so that is going to do it for the lowdown. We're going to move into second string, where we talk all things tech. And your boy, you talked about him earlier, Zuckerberg. You know, he mentioned he's going to lay off another 10,000 employees, and has doubled down on his focus on efficiency. In addition to efficiency, he's looks like it. Apparently, they're going. Facebook, the company that renamed itself to Meta, which about a year and a half ago was all into the metaverse. Now they have apparently have pivoted, and now they're all about artificial intelligence nowadays. According to this quote from Mark Zuckerberg, our single largest investment is in advancing AI and building it into every one of our products. He noted how AI tools can help users of its apps express themselves, discover new content, but also said that AI tools can be used to increase efficiencies internally by helping engineers write better code faster. Again, if the whole meta thing hadn't happened, you'd be like, well, I can see that. But the fact that he's pretty much said the exact same thing a year or two ago, talking about how the metaverse is the
Metaverse.
future. Now all of a sudden AI is the future. So what do you think this is Zuckerberg, is this his come to Jesus moment about the metaverse? Is the dude just grasping at straws? What do you think in this decision, this new decision?
I think it's two things. The first thing, Chat GPT got the girls scared. They got their backs up against the wall. They're like, wait a minute, hold on. You're making
Mm-hmm.
us pivot our whole portfolio because, as I mentioned earlier, kind of like the whole what's on trend. Chat GPT is on trend. I think Microsoft just announced today their GPT version 4 that
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like all the rage. And then there are some issues with that because Microsoft just laid off their whole their whole ethics and society team, and they launched this without them. So that's an issue. But I think the girls are scared of not being in on what's going on with
Mm-hmm.
OpenAI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where nobody's talking about the metaverse anymore. Everybody's talking about these chatbots,
Mm-hmm.
and they are losing their market share on that. And two, I think they realize the time suck and the money suck that metaverse is. And
In the
it's not
long game. Yeah.
right. It's definitely a long game. And unfortunately, in this society, the long game doesn't necessarily work when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to certain types of technology because people's focus shift. Now, if Apple comes in with their AR VR headset and they start to do more with that, then they may get a bump. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think right now in this tech landscape, AI is king. It's been the trend has been coming for a while now. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we're at the peak with this revolution and how people just really took to Chat GPT. And now everybody is integrating their own
Mm-hmm.
GPT version into their software, into their products. And it's just kind of overshadowing everything. So now, if Facebook doesn't want to get behind the 8 ball in this, they
Mm-hmm.
have to make that pivot. But they hired all these metaverse people. Now, if they can't take the people that they've hired and repurpose them to work in the AI space, then that's why they, in addition to, preparing for, any type of recession or anything, they're going to have to get rid of all those people they hired to
Mm-hmm.
bring in the new people that have the skill set. Now it's very interesting because some of the skill sets overlap. Like I work in AI/ML. We use both AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning in the job that I do every day. So if you have people who have kind of both skill sets that can maybe toggle, maybe those people from the metaverse are safe. But if you only have machine learning experience and you can't really pivot and they can't really use you, then you got to go. And
Right.
I am so grateful because they were on my back for a while trying to get me to interview. It had begotten
Facebook or Meta.
face
Right.
meta, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for a metaverse position. And
Oh, get out of here.
no, seriously, like they sent one person, to talk. And I started the conversation, I started talking about them. All the things sounded real good. And then I told her, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put a pin in this process because one, I just don't have it in me to go through the interview process of all it takes
The
to leave.
grueling being
Yeah,
a Facebooker.
it's
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot. It's
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And I
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't have the bandwidth for it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the mental capacity to deal with that. So, and I told her, she was like, you know what? I completely understand. She would email me every month. And then after I was like, no, I'm still not interested. Then they sent a black girl
Oh.
after me.
They know where their bread is buttered.
Then after that, they had some invite only event for certain types of engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Then those people came after me. We need you to sign up for this event. We want you to come. We want to talk to you. And I mean, it was one of those things where I didn't even apply for this.
Right. Peer pressure, boy.
I didn't even come for them. And I was like, I don't know how, because I was talking to some friends about it, and I was like, I don't know how I could possibly go and work for Meta, Facebook, or whatever, because I've talked so much shit about them. I mean, so much.
uh,
They come back and pull up some of these snobOS episodes. It's like, we don't offering her no job. Are you crazy? But it was one of those things where it was like incessant. I
mm-hmm.
mean, phone calls, emails, LinkedIn messages. They even went to an email address that I don't even use no more.
Get out of
And
here.
I promise you. And like I emailed one of the recruiters something, and it was like, in the middle of the night, because I'm a night owl, and I was like, let me go ahead and answer some of these emails that I have. Do you know she responded to me within like 30
Immediately.
minutes? I was
Immediately.
like, what the hell? I was like, this is not a good indication that I want to work for your company. If you're responding to their West Coast, the recruiter I was
mm-hmm.
talking to at the time was West Coast. So it was 9 o'clock there, 10 o'clock there. And
What
you
you doing on your work
responded,
computer?
right. And
That's
you
why you need to.
responded almost immediately.
That's
Like,
why you need to. That's why you need to use Apple's new snooze features in mail to where you can send off a email and schedule it to be sent later.
yeah. Because I was like, the money, it's Facebook. So the money
Of
was
course, they was
popping.
throwing. Yeah, yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
just hand over fist. But then
Mm-hmm.
I was like, but what am I going to have to give up of myself
Right,
to
right, right.
do this
For
type
much.
of job? And, even before, the kind of money that they make at Facebook, I know the type of environment, hardcore engineers. I hate that term.
Mm-hmm.
Hardcore. You got to be hardcore, or you're a rock star. You got to rock star it out. All those, nomenclature, all those
Cliches. Yeah.
cliche terms that you
Mm-hmm.
get in tech companies, that you get with engineers. It's just like, oh God, go away. And my thought was, that's why I honestly put the pin in it, because I was like, sure, you can make a really good living and make a lot of money, but to what expense? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how many hours am I going to have to work? What
Mm-hmm.
type of pressure or stress am I going to be? I'm going to make all this money, but I'm not going to be able to spend it because I'm working.
And
So it's
then
those type of things. It's just like, I don't think it's worth it.
and then fast forward to today where
Had
Meta's
I
like,
took it,
they like Metaverse. We off that. We off that. We on this AI
y'all
now.
lame. Take this
Uh,
L. Go over there. But yeah,
mm-hmm.
so it's one of those things where it's something gets super popular. And like I talked about, they did all the hiring. I mean, it was pretty aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm just one person that's happened to, what's happening to thousands of people. And
And
some
there's some
people took
people
the
out there
bait.
took it. Yep, they
And
took it.
people took it.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it is innovative, it is forward thinking to know that you'd be on the ground floor leading, building out the metaverse, which was the cornerstone of Facebook. Some people just like that challenge of things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
challenge is cool, I'm down for it, but at the end of the day, it's about the money.
Right.
So some people took it, but now, what it says, a year and a half later, they
Mm-hmm.
are, SOL. They're either going to have to find another job, or they're going to have to pivot within Facebook to
Something
do a
that they may
different
not be
role.
interested in.
Right.
Something that wasn't. That
What they
didn't.
didn't
Right. What they didn't
what they
sign
didn't
up
come up
for.
for. Right. They didn't come
Mm-hmm.
here for that. So
Yep.
yeah.
So
So yeah,
again,
it's
that leads
wild.
me. That leads me to maybe because all of the players are getting into OpenAI and
Hmm.
Chat GPT and all these things to where it may have some staying power, but this still feels to me like a trend until something else comes up. We may get into, we were hot on autonomous cars
Hmm.
and
That's what I do.
right, and now everything was metaverse, and before that it was crypto and blockchain and web 3, and here we
Web
go.
5. It's up to Web 6, I think now. And I'm like, what the
and
hell?
and here we go, moving on to something else when we just knew Bitcoin and blockchain technology was future.
Ethereum, Solana, it's taking it. That's
When was
that
the
girl.
last time anybody said anything about blockchain and crypto? They haven't, because we've moved on to the
Outside of when things collapse and people lose their money.
right.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
to me, this chat, I could be wrong. Kick me, let's go, fast forward. If everything takes off, you can come back to this episode and be like,
Yeah.
we knew you weren't
Y'all
talking about
was
nothing.
wrong.
But
Yeah.
to me, just like Metaverse, just like art, AR, if we were all into that a couple years ago, now this chat GPT thing, it just feels like something else is going to come, and then everybody's going to pivot from that. So
But I
it's
think
go ahead.
no, I would say before what I was going to say is that we're on the chat GPT thing, but the broad range of what's covered in
The
AI,
application.
yeah,
Hmm.
we might be off the chat GPT stuff, but it's going, I think AI is
As a
our,
Yeah.
as a industry
Hmm.
is that girl, and just
Okay.
whatever kind of pops out of AI is going to be kind of close. Because you think about it, they had the dogs, the that were kind of doing their own thing, and
The
then
robots.
yeah, the robots and
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay. Okay.
And so all that kind of falls into that was like a big thing for a while, and then that kind of faded to the
Robotics.
background.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of came up. So right now it's this open AI, and I hope people who are in it, tech is just like any other industry. It has trends, it has peaks and valleys.
Hmm.
And, if you've learned anything from this whole metaverse thing now, you know how, it can be hot one minute and then
Hmm.
not the next
Make sure
minute,
it's a passion, not just something you just jumping
chasing
on.
for money. Yeah.
Yeah, got you. All right,
Yeah.
that makes sense. All right, so that's all we had about that. The last thing that I thought was interesting, which I didn't see coming at all, it seems like there's been some pushback from Pinterest, to where Pinterest has taken some aggressive action in regards to some of the pictures that are available to live on Pinterest, right? You think of Pinterest as this place to where you can go see pictures, you can create boards. Like, for instance, if you're taking a trip, you can look at, best outfits or something. You can create
Hmm.
a
Baby
board,
showers are a big thing.
right?
I know
Weddings,
weddings,
yeah,
birthdays, all that stuff. Yeah.
right. So it seems like what kind of flew under the radar was the ability for people to create pins and boards of images that alone are harmless. But if you put them together in a board, they can kind of paint a picture of
Oh,
nudity, pornography, and sexualized content as it relates to kids,
oh,
right?
Jesus
So,
Christ.
it seems like, let me read this. Let me find it. As NBC News uncovered, individually innocuous photos and videos of little girls on Pinterest have been compiled by dozens, hundreds, and even thousands into public boards, with titles such as "Sexy Little Girls," "Delicious," "Hot," and "Young Girls." These
Oh
images,
God.
which often show the children in bathing suits, leotards, and other light attire, are in many cases uploaded to the platform by the kids themselves for family members who have no idea how they're being used. One woman whose 9-year-old daughter's gymnastic videos were saved more than 50 boards of
Oh
that nature
Jesus.
told NBC News she was shocked and disgusted by the discovery. And again, there were some senators who kind of used this information and brought it to Pinterest. Senators Marsha Blackburn,
Ugh.
Richard Blumenthal sent
Uh,
a letter to the company Tuesday morning demanding to know why these new tools weren't already available. And the tools that they're talking about, Pinterest's new safety features, emphasis on new, enable users to report boards and accounts for, quote, nudity, pornography, or sexualized content, which the site then defines as including intentional misuse involving minors. Previously, boards could not be flagged at all, Individual accounts could be reported only for spam and or inappropriate cover image. So basically, these senators saw this trend, or they were using this trend as their little sounding board to get some PR. But in the end, it seems like Pinterest was kind of lax on how people can create these boards, specifically as it relates to, like I mentioned, pornography, kids online, Safety Act, things of that nature. So what do you think about this? Are these senators just looking for a bully to pick on? Or, are you surprised that Pinterest, you're able to curate these type of boards on Pinterest, and why this wasn't kind of nipped in the bud or monitored a little bit closely prior to this?
So I think the two senators are definitely looking for someone to bully, but in this case, that's not necessarily a bad thing because of
Mm-hmm.
what has come out of this. Now, granted, this is where AI, this is where ethics come in when you're creating these types of platforms, when you're creating these type of apps, to have some foresight on, the different use cases. But I'm going to be honest, who would, how does your mind have to work and be contorted to think people posting their children's gymnastics videos or their, them at the beach or at the pool is going to turn into disgusting men using this as pornography when there's nothing pornographic about it? It's innocent. And it's one of those things where
That's the thing, though. You said it. It's innocent. The outlandish, the purposely sexy, the thirst traps, that is purposeful,
right,
right? It's the
that's the
innocence.
intent, right?
Right. The innocence is what attracts these, because it's all about power, it's all about control. And, again, I'm not trying to jump in the mind of a,
Don't want to
pervert,
go there.
but at the
Don't
same
want that.
time, it's the innocence that draws them in. And seeing kids, seeing girls in bathing suits, or boys, depending on, how they roll, the gymnastics outfits, the volleyball
Completely
outfits, you
completely
know,
innocuous,
right.
completely no sexual type of innuendo or
It,
thought. It's the individual who's bringing that into these innocent photos. And again, sure, it's easy to blame the tech company for not having these tools in place,
mm,
but nobody thought that they needed to put these tools in place, because how do you get to the point of, yes, I just want a gold medal in my competition, to now you're being used as pornographic images. So it's one of
what's
those things where technology is catching up with the perversion
mm-hmm,
of people, and then realizing, oh crap, this is a problem, this is an issue.
mm-hmm,
Now let's go back in and put the protocols in place. And now that we know that these are the type of issues we need to be mindful of, now
mm-hmm,
we can put them in there. But it's one of those things where nobody, when the creators of Pinterest came up with Pinterest, I can't fathom that they thought that they would get from the original intent was to create ideas for something you're doing for your home or a
mm-hmm,
party or an event, to from that going from the peaks of that all the way to the gutter low
mm-hmm.
of using innocent children for nefarious reasons.
No,
So it's
absolutely not. But at the same time, these companies are the whole point of how's that phrase go? The whole reason behind building a business is to make money. And when you make money, the whole point is to maximize profit, minimize costs. You know what costs a lot of money? Human moderators. You know what
yeah,
costs a lot of money? Somebody or some piece of technology to scour through these pictures
AI
to find
imaging.
out. Right. That costs money, and that's a cost that I'm pretty sure Pinterest, like you mentioned, morally, ethically didn't think they would have to do, but also financially was like, nah, we good. Until somebody brought it to
Put
their
it in our
attention. It's like,
pockets. Yeah.
now all of a sudden they are taking these aggressive, um, uh, where they say, let me find some of their wording. Um, let's see. Now they updated their machine learning models to better understand and distinguish legitimate uses and appropriate engagement with content. You know, there was some other things.
Because it's not necessarily the image that they have to look for, it's the board that they have to
Right,
look for. You need to look for what if a board has too many images of children in different states of dress and the
right,
naming of the board, that those are the things you have to change. And at the core, that's not what the business is. The business is putting images on there. So
right.
now it's like, now you got to take me out of my scope of work of putting images for boards to now
Hmm.
moderating the boards, and not just the boards, but the context that they're in.
Right,
So
right.
say you have a person who is designing leotards for a gymnastics company. They may have a board
Models.
with
Yeah.
different types of, children to adults in leotards. Now it's like, do I flag that for pornography? Or
Right.
is that just, the normal course of business that we expect people to use it for? So it gets into a lot of minutia. It takes a lot of really smart people to now come up with models to determine, you
Hmm.
know, what is good, what is bad. But what I think this points out is, I don't know if you saw on Twitter this week, between yesterday and the day before, there was this big debate on Twitter because this one therapist post, I think it was originally on TikTok and it made it over to Twitter, talking about how this therapist said that she was not going to accept any more male clients. And I mean, they slaughtered this lady. That's discrimination. Men need help too. I mean, just going in on her. And then someone kind of quote tweeted that. It was like, wait until you hear about
Why?
waxers not accepting male clients. And the horror stories, holy crap. I had to stop reading it because it was horrible. And it went from a therapist to estheticians to waxers to massage therapists to dermatologists to dentists. All of these women have certain requirements when it comes to taking on male patients, whether
Hmm.
you're a medical doctor, whether you are a therapist. It was because men are perverts. Like
So
one
with the
girl,
therapist, forget the other. Well,
mhm,
my imagination can
yeah,
go
yeah,
with the waxers and the massage
morgues.
therapists.
The morgues really threw me
Ugh, not
out.
that. Forget that one.
Yeah,
Ugh.
when that one
But
popped up, I said, I'm out,
therapists though,
tapping
what
out.
was it? I don't. I'm not familiar with this debate. But what was the therapist? What was her reasoning behind? I'm assuming. Uh, uh, um.
Along those same lines, I believe, because I think when I saw hers, it was when I think she didn't give enough context as to why she originally made the
Hmm.
statement that she wasn't going. I think she just said, because I think when I went and looked at it, of course people start to do multiples, and I'm like, I'm not watching all those. But the one that I saw and what I read, it was that she was like, she isn't going to accept any more male clients,
Hmm.
because of, her experience with them. And then that's when they jumped on her. And then when the woman who quote tweeted about the waxers,
Hmm.
then that's where it kind of evolved into the different things that these women professionals have experienced
Hmm.
with male clients, and why they say, males, female patients only. And even in some instances, it was male doctors who said that they wouldn't take any more male patients because it on the women end, it was more of sexual harassment, sexual assault.
Hmm.
On
Hmm.
the male end, it was more ego driven, where if you gave someone a diagnosis or a suggestion because you went to them as a professional for medical
Mm-hmm.
help. It's
Mm-hmm.
the ego that gets into it and the anger that gets into it. But it was just some of the things that these women had experienced with their male clients. Like my thing is like a dermatologist. Like, what? But they were
Right.
like, people have dermatologists, they are skin doctors, right? So
Right.
you
Not
have
just your
skin all
face.
about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if they do, some of the women doctors said that if they do accept male clients, they don't accept any skin issues that are below the waist. You can only do face, neck, arms, because and then it even got down to barbers. Like they have like female barbers, like they have to make sure that the male hand are visible at all time, or have like clear, what do you call them, cape things. One lady said that she was a massage therapist. She had someone book a session. They paid for all the stuff. They come in. She's thinking it's a regular session. He told her he didn't want the massage. He wanted her. So he booked the session to basically try and have a date with this woman.
Mm-hmm.
Morgues,
Mm-hmm.
they said we don't hire male morticians because they can't be trusted with the bodies.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
gross.
I mean, it was pretty.
Jeez.
The thread, I was like, let me slide Twitter over to the side because it got really dark really fast. And all of this ties into the fact that these men are using innocent
Otherwise
things
innocent
to otherwise
to
innocent
and
things.
pervert them.
Correct.
So again, it sucks that Pinterest is put in that position.
Right.
But again, it's like, all right,
It's not an anomaly.
it's
It's
not,
not.
it's not, it can't be, oh, we didn't know. It's
Right.
like you almost have to bank on the idea that somebody is going to take these pictures and pervert them, whether just pervert them into something that they're just not supposed to be used for, or literally perversion, right?
Right. Right.
And the fact that now, again, I found it as surprising that now, after Kate Snow from, I think she's from ABC, or I can't remember what show
I'm not
she's on.
familiar.
I think she's one of the more popular morning anchors, I think on NBC. She had a little interview and things of that nature. Now all of a sudden, Pinterest is taking these.
Oh,
Let me
she did
find
a
a.
story on Pinterest.
Yeah, she did a
Okay. Okay.
story about Pinterest, and now all of a sudden, Pinterest is taking immediate, broad, and aggressive action to deactivate
Mhm.
thousands of bad actors and anyone engaging with content in inappropriate ways. I'm like, why does it take all this attention for companies to be like, hey, we may want to be proactive about some of the ways some of these people are treating some of these pictures? I just found that interesting. Again, it sucks that it's Pinterest because, again, like you mentioned, people mostly look at that. How am I going to decorate my bedroom? But now
Right.
that is, again, like you mentioned, somebody could take something as innocent as a dermatologist and pervert that. So why wouldn't you think they'll take a little picture of some kids in a outfit and pervert that as well?
Just disgusting. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
All
Jesus
right.
Christ.
So that is it for second string. We're going to move into for the culture. I don't know if you heard, but it
Hmm.
seems like the parent company of BET, Paramount, is exploring a possible sale of a majority stake in BET. That just means the person or persons who win the bid will have a majority stake. They won't have sole control. And it looks like there are a lot of people lining up to purchase BET. Obviously, in my opinion, Tyler Perry's name has came up again. There's no official officials on whether or not Paramount is considering anybody, more or less Tyler Perry. But it seems like Tyler Perry has expressed interest.
Hmm.
He already owns a minority stake in BET Plus, and he's got 50,000,000 shows
Shows.
on BET already.
Hmm.
So, like I said, obviously, it seems like he would be a natural fit for being consideration. Byron Allen, who bought the Weather
Media mogul.
Channel, has sued Comcast and has a good chance in winning because of their diversity issues. It makes sense for him to want to buy BET because his whole thing is diversity. There's names like Diddy, who on the low, owns a media company in Revolt.
Revolt. Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes sense for him to be talked about again. None of these are actual, nobody's in negotiations right now,
Mm-hmm.
but these are just some of the
All
names.
rumors.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily rumors. These people have expressed interest in
Oh.
buying BET. It's not just people saying, "Oh, Tyler Perry should buy it or
Oh,
Diddy should
okay.
buy
All
it."
right.
No, they've actually said, we're interested. If negotiations and talks happen, we'd be interested. I guess my question is, the story. A couple other stories I've read have kind of talked about how BET is kind of like they ain't the juggernaut that they used to be. The revenues ain't double and triple year over year as compared to some of these other networks. It's kind of stagnant right about now. Um, you know, the conversation is it's like number one, who would want to buy a company that really ain't doing nothing if not on the downturn? And then two, what are people going to do with BET? What is BET right about now? Is it uplifting, powerful, entertainment for black folks to enrich and empower their lives? Is BET, stepchild for Bravo with the reality shows and some of the nonsense that they put on there? Where do people want to see BET? I kind of wanted to do that brain dump on you to kind of get your opinions on, some of these people interested in buying it and where you think BET should be, where you think it needs to be.
So, initially hearing about this, Tyler Perry, I get why he would be interested. Byron Allen, I get why he would be interested. Now, as far as Diddy, when his name popped into this, my
Mm-hmm.
first thought, I mean, it's going to be, this is shady, but I mean, it is what it is. My first thought was, did they really bring Diddy into this to try and drive up the price
Oh.
between Tyler Perry and Byron Allen? As they are serious contenders. And we know in the past that Diddy has, allowed himself to be a little bit of a pawn in, some situations to, make a little bit of extra, off of this. So
Okay.
that aside, um, I think it makes sense. It's very interesting that Deborah Lee, who was once the president, and I want to say maybe CEO, or she's just president of
She
BET at a
was.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And when Bob Johnson first came out with this was revolutionary, for
Mm-hmm.
our community. And when it first came out, it wasn't just reruns of old shows. We had Teen Summit, we had 106 in Park, we
Mm-hmm.
had the basement, we had news, we had, it was um I don't want to say legitimate network for black people, but it was
More
to me
balanced.
more balanced, and it hit, you had sports, we
Mm-hmm.
had, commentary, we had Roland Martin, we had, all of these different pieces that spoke to the black experience outside of just the entertainment aspect. And what it appears that the network has flown into is purely entertainment, purely where reruns go to die, type of thing. And it's not really given us what the original intention was and what it
Mm-hmm.
used to. So for Tyler Perry and Byron Allen, I definitely see them bringing that back.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think Tyler Perry has more of the visibility and the weight, but we know he's on the entertainment aspect. So
Mm-hmm.
he may try and make it more entertainment focused. I
Mm-hmm.
think Byron Allen may have a better balance of, making sure we have the entertainment aspect, but also having the business and news, because there was a business show that used to be on BET back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So for
Jackie
these.
Reed. Jackie Reed was
Yeah.
my is still my favorite crush. Had a crush on Jackie Reed. I think I met her one time. Did I meet her one time or saw her? I think I saw her one time somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Didn't know how to act.
Completely lost your mind. But it's one of those things where I think either of these two individuals, even though with BT Plus, I think a lot of people watch the shows on that, and I think apparently shows supposed to be pretty good. I'd said a long time ago, I'm not buying no more subscription services. I got enough. I can't add no more. Um, and it seems like BT Plus is going in an upward trajectory where BT minus, so to speak, BT proper, is more of your reruns of your old TV shows, your movies. There's no really any real innovation behind it. And I think the purpose of these two people expressing interest would be to get it back to its former glory and even, innovate even more. So that would be my thought on why these two individuals in particular would want to buy a controlling stake in BET.
um, BET Plus is doing well. My wife watches or wants to. She she's right in between, reality shows.
Mm,
Really doesn't really get down with those all that much. There's a couple that she watches, but there are some shows on BET Plus that are pretty good. Some of them actually, Tyler Perry has a hand in, right?
hmm
So I think Tyler Perry is turning a corner in the type of content to where before it was kind of, black people,
Chitlin Circuit.
yeah, chicken circuit type stuff, right? To where now it's kind of turning into, like sitcom back them the sitcoms, the drama, without it being, so unbelievable, right? He's kind of mixing some current events and current, issues and challenges that black folks face, right? So
Mhm.
seems like that's starting to do well. BET proper. I'm not sure personally what that would look like in my, if I ran BET. I'm not sure what the audience, not just black folks,
Mhm.
just how we as humans look at media and where does that how does BET fit into that? Because it seems like we're all over the place right now.
Mhm.
You know, are we sports? Are we, which is good, variety, but at the same time, it's like how do you build or rebuild a media entity around how we watch television right now? Because it seems like it's all over the place.
Mhm.
You know, we're watching it live for like things that we normally watch it live for, like the Oscars,
Mhm.
like sports, right? But even some of those, they're starting to be separated from regular television, right? So, Apple has trying to get MLS and MLB, and you got, some of these other ones got soccer, and it's not on regular television anymore. So it's like,
Mhm.
how does BET compete with those when it's, you just can't put it on BET at 8 o'clock when it's everybody's watching everything all over the place, right? Byron Allen, he bought the Black News Channel. That was a channel that started about a year ago.
Mhm.
Had some financial issues, but you think of your Mark Lamont Hills, you think of some of those names, you think of Roland Martin.
Ooh, Team
He was,
Summit. That was a show I was thinking of.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you said it. I think you
Oh,
said
I
Team
did.
Summit.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think of those people who are out there who could contribute to content that may bring people back to BET, but they're already out there. Like for instance, Roland Martin is already got his own streaming network, and it's like, why are we waiting for BET to come back to where we could just go out and find this content. It just we just have to work a little bit harder. Again, like you mentioned, you're not paying for the more streaming. You may have to bite the bullet and subscribe and all these other things. So it's I don't know. I honestly don't know what BET would look like under anybody. That would be engaging enough for people to come back to make it what we once known as BET when it kind
They
of
would have to have a hell of a marketing PR team. I think
mhm.
a large part of their budget would go to getting a dynamic team that knows the clientele and can use it to pull people back in, because otherwise, people already have their preconceived notions of BET, and that's black people. And then non-black people already have their preconceived notions
Which well,
of
I
it
don't
as
think we've ever
well.
really cared about anyway.
No,
It's just,
no,
we are not a monolith.
right,
And I think maybe BET is an example of that.
right.
Is a use case
Yeah,
of we are not a monolith. So there's no one station that can appeal to
encompass
all of
all the
us.
blackness. Yeah,
Right, right,
yeah.
right. And is that BET's charge?
Mm,
I would assume that anybody looking to acquire it would look to make a conglomerate to where black people feel safe, or they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel entertained, they can laugh, they can joke. There's some guilty pleasures,
yeah,
but at the same time, can it be that all encompassing thing? And I think that's the
no.
question, that BT is going, whoever takes it over, if even if Paramount decides to sell it, that's going to be their charge. And can it even be done
Can it be
anymore?
done? Yeah, that's hard. It's hard because if you if you try to be too broad, you're going to lose a bunch of people. If you try and be too narrow, you're only going to kind of have to
Get that
stay
niche.
in
Yeah.
that lane. And do they want to be niche, or do they want to be, for lack of a better term, mainstream?
Right. Right.
Mm.
All right. So that is it for the culture. We're going to move into the hookup. I think I may have done this time last year, but if it is tax season and if you're looking to corral all of your documents, and you may have some emails that need to turn into documents to give over to your tax professional, there is a way that you can create a document. Well, turn a document into a PDF solely on your iPhone. And basically what it kind of uses iCloud Drive. Every iPhone gets a free 5 gigs of iCloud space, but there's a trick to where you can take any document. It doesn't even, it ideally it's not a PDF. Maybe take an email that you want to turn into a document, right? The trick is you have to pretend like you're printing the document. So you open up the document on your phone and you go to the print option. Once it goes to the print option at the top of the screen, it'll give you all the options for the printer and the layout and double sided and color or whatever the case may be. But it'll also give you a small preview at the bottom of the document. What you want to do is pinch and zoom on that document till it spreads out to that fits the full screen of your phone. And then if you hit the share button at the lower left hand side, it'll give you share options to save it to iCloud Drive. Once it saves it to iCloud Drive, it'll automatically convert it into a PDF. So therefore, you don't have to export the email into like Adobe and then set everything up. You can actually, from that one share screen, actually pretend like you're going to print the document, but then actually pinch and zoom out to spread the document to a full screen, and then actually hit the share button to actually share to iCloud Drive. Once it shares to iCloud Drive, it'll convert it into a PDF, and then you can email it, save it to wherever you want to save it to. It doesn't have to stay in Google. It doesn't have to stay in iCloud Drive. You can save it to your documents folder. You can save it to Google Drive. You can save it to OneDrive. You can send it an email. But once you do any of those things, it'll automatically convert it to a PDF document. So that is my tip for the week. If you want a quick way to convert a document into a PDF, you want to pretend like you're going to print it, but actually save it to iCloud Drive, and iCloud Drive will convert it to a PDF for you.
And I did want to mention one other thing, because I don't think I think it'll be happened by the time we record next week. For those of us on Twitter, starting on the 20th, Twitter is taking away the SMS two-factor authentication for non-Twitter Blue users. So if you have that activated now and that's the service that you're using, you need to go ahead prior to the 20th and set up a new way of two-factor authentication on your Twitter account. If you are an iPhone user, I have it actually set up on my Twitter. You can go into your passwords and you can set up two-factor authentication where the your iPhone will give you the verification code and it
Mm-hmm.
regenerates itself. So just kind of a FYI for anybody who does not have Twitter Blue, who's not paying the $8, who wants a way to authenticate your account, which is a good idea because Twitter is a wild, wild place. As soon as
Mm-hmm.
your boy took it over and we had this capability on iPhone, I immediately switched over because
Mm-hmm.
I noticed when right before he took over, I downloaded all of my data and I never got notification via email with the that the download was ready, and it took several days for the authentication text to come through. And I knew at that point that with all the people that they let go, something in the security water, something in the security
Mm-hmm.
milk was not clean. So I was like, let me go ahead and take advantage of this. So it's pretty easy to set up if you just go in and click on the set up the authentication. It'll walk you right through it and get you set up, and you can use your authentication that way.
All right, all right. So we got two tips for the week, and I think that is going to do it. We definitely want to thank all those for listening to the show. If you want more information about the show, where to find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, how to get to our subscribe to the show. We definitely need people to subscribe on a regular. And how do you do that? You go to snobOScast.com. That'll get you all the places where you need to go, especially like I mentioned at the top. If you want to become a financial supporter, you can go to snobOScast.com to get all that information. Nica, tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva on all of the social media platforms.
And you can find me at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH. If you want to converse with us on Twitter, you can do so by going to snobOS Cast. And that is going to do it for this week. Until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.